WBNE.
Hello and welcome to episode 89, all about The Hobbit, Chapter 3, A Short Rest, being the 89th part of That's What I'm Talking About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. And today I'm joined once again by Beth Reekles. She is the author of The Kissing Booth, as well as many other projects, I believe, by now. And then also just an all-around wonderful friend to the WBNE network. Welcome back, Beth.
Thanks, MC. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me back again.
You're such a wonderful person, and I'm just so glad to have you here. Well, in real time, as we're recording, I'm dealing with a bunch of terrible people on the internet, so I'm just delighted to talk to Beth today.
If only those trolls could be dealt with as easily as the ones in the chapter that you would have just talked about.
That's true. Yeah. I do wish that that they had just turned to stone when the sun rose. That would be awfully convenient. Yeah, that would be extremely appropriate for now. But so Beth, tell me about how you got into, like, what was your experience with getting into The Hobbit for the first time, however long ago that was, or if it was more recently maybe.
So I'm trying to think what year, because I know I got the book when the first film had come out, because I asked my parents for it for like Christmas or birthday. And I specifically said, I don't want the movie cover of the book, which is a problem I know you had when you were trying to get a copy of it.
Right, yeah, I remember you told me this on Twitter, yeah.
And, of course, the only version that they could get was the one with, like, Martin Freeman on the front, which, like, is fine, but,
I was going to say, there are worse people to have. Yeah, but I get it.
I think that must have been, like, 10 years ago now or something. And I remember, so my introduction to the Lord of the Rings universe was watching the movies first, and then the first book that I read was The Hobbit, and I read it on a plane to Florida, and I just devoured the whole thing in like 8 or 9 hours or whatever it was. I really enjoyed The Hobbit, whereas the Fellowship took me several weeks to try and get through.
Oh, it's a slog for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about the movie cover of the book and like all the aesthetics of that. Listeners will know from the episode I did. Like as I'm recording, it just came out like this week or last week, but by the time you're listening to this, it'll have been several weeks ago. I had like a whole fiasco trying to find a very specific version of The Hobbit, and I was calling like local bookstores and was like, do you have this version? And they're like, no, crazy person, we don't. We're like, I wanted something to match my versions of Lord of the Rings, but I didn't want it to have any reference to the movie. So I totally get that like you don't, yeah. It's all about the bookshelf aesthetic.
Yeah, like the number of messages and like emails that I get from people saying, where can I get an original copy of The Kissing Booth? And I'm like, you can't. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you just can't. But I'm always like really sympathetic because I think I know this problem. I have it as a reader. You just want your bookshelf to look so nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even though it makes no difference to the reading experience.
I know,
right? You just can't help it.
Like, that's why I was, like, struggling with, because I ordered a copy of The Hobbit that I thought didn't say now a major motion picture. And then it arrived and it did say it. And I was, like, losing my mind. And then I was, like, trying to convince myself. I was like, this does not matter. You know, this one line of text on the front cover isn't going to change anything about the story. And also, like, it's not like you're going to have... it's not like I'm going to have my books front facing on my bookshelf. I'll just be able to see the spine. So it's not like it'll, yeah, but I'll know. And so I was trying to convince myself that it was okay. And no, I couldn't do it. But I did get my copy of The Hobbit that doesn't say now a major motion picture. And
success.
I'm enjoying reading it so far. It's so much easier than Lord of the Rings.
So much easier.
So let's jump into the chapter. This is chapter 3, A Short Rest, and this is also a very short chapter. It's like 9 or 10 pages maybe, and one of those pages in my copy is an illustration. So
Oh, I didn't get an illustration in mine. I feel cheated.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I wonder if it probably says on here somewhere like who did the illustrations.
That's really weird though, because I did have an illustration for the trolls in the last chapter.
Okay, so this particular illustration, it's of Rivendell, and it is a reproduction of J.R.R. Tolkien's Color Plate by Nicolette Cavan, and they had to have referenced it when they were doing the movies, like the creators, because it looks exactly like Rivendell when they do that long shot.
Yeah.
When the Fellowship is like entering Rivendell or they're leaving or something. It looks like, let me see if I can like show you.
Oh my god, I'm so gutted that I didn't have this image in my book.
Yeah, so like they had to have referenced this because it looks exactly like it in the movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a spoiler alert for what happens in this chapter. We start off there, our gang is leaving and continuing on the journey after the harrowing events of the trolls, who were not leaving comments on TikToks. They were just regular trolls. And you know this is serious. You know they're very serious about all this, and they're not in good spirits because there's no singing or telling stories.
Sing.
There's no singing happening.
No. Well, not yet.
And it says they had begun to feel that danger was not far away on either side. So they're kind of in the previous chapter, and was it the previous in the previous chapter when they had like just started this journey, Bilbo like right at the start is like, this is really fun adventuring, and then like has a lot of moments so far where he's like, maybe this isn't as fun as I thought it was gonna be. And so like that's kind of
like it starts raining, I think, in the last chapter, and he's like, I missed my chair and my kettle.
Yeah, he's like, I miss... Yeah, and he has that thought, too, now where he's thinking once again of his comfortable chair before the fire in his favorite sitting room in his hobbit hole and of the kettle singing. So, yeah, he's, like, realizing that, oh, this is getting kind of serious. There's some dangerous situations happening. Maybe adventures aren't all they're cracked up to be.
Yeah, there's the line just before that bit as well where he says, just at that moment he felt more tired than he ever remembered feeling before. And I just thought that whole paragraph is such a mood for the last year.
So relatable, so relatable.
I really felt for Bilbo.
Yeah. So that all, that response he has is in response to, they see some mountains and Bilbo's like, oh, are those the mountains we're going to? And Gandalf is like, no, that's literally just the beginning. We have so much farther to go. And Bilbo's like, oh no. I'm very tired all of a sudden. And I get that where like you're, I don't know, as soon as you realize like how much farther you have to go for something, you just immediately become way more tired. It has nothing to do, it's like a very mental thing.
It feels like that sort of procrastinator vibe of like when you have a project or just something that needs doing, like even if it's just the laundry and you think, oh yeah, I could do that. And then you look at it and go, nope.
No.
Mm-mm.
Oh.
I'm just going to sit down.
Now that you say that, I just remembered that I put clothes in the washer last night.
No.
And I had not put them in the dryer.
I am really sorry to have reminded you at that.
I'm going to have to remember to do that when we finish this call. Whoops, that's my bad. Sorry, roommates. I'm hogging the laundry right now. So, yeah, Bilbo's very tired. I relate to that so much. And then Gandalf gets, like, very ominous and, like, dark. And he's like, we need food and rest and... we have to go this certain, or actually, no, he doesn't even say we. This is very, as the kids would say these days, it's very sus to me, suspicious. Because he says, it is very necessary to tackle the misty mountains by the proper path, or else you will get lost in them and have to come back and start at the beginning again, if you ever get back at all.
I absolutely love that kind of the parentheses right at the end, because that's happened a couple of times in the first few chapters where they're like, oh yeah, we'll do that when we come back, if anyone comes back at all.
Yeah.
And you just think it's a little bit ominous for like a kid's book, but they all say it like
very casually.
They kind of move on very quickly.
Yeah,
very casually. So you don't get this kind of foreboding and sense of like doom and gloom that you might have in, I guess, Lord of the Rings. if someone had said that.
Yeah, they never really linger on it. And then I'm also like, Gandalf, why did you start saying you instead of like we or us? And so I'm just getting, because in the previous chapter, he just disappeared.
Yeah, and they were like, was he just like walking with us? Was he actually accompanying us somewhere?
Yeah, they didn't. I'm like already. I love Gandalf because in Lord of the Rings we get Gandalf the Grey very briefly, and then he's Gandalf the White. And even when he is Gandalf the Grey, he's very serious because it's a very serious mission that they're on. So I'm loving this like chaotic Gandalf the Grey.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
He's so funny. Yeah, so I'm half expecting that in the next chapter they're going to be like, wait, where did Gandalf go? Why is he not with us anymore? And so he says that up ahead is Rivendell, and we will be staying and resting with Elrond, who lives in the last homely house. Oh, and he also mentions that Rivendell is a valley, and in my brain I was just like, oh, Rivendell is like a city. And he says it's a valley, and that just like never occurred to me that like it would be like a geographical area. I don't know. And then we get, in case we were all missing it from reading Lord of the Rings, we get a good solid paragraph of landscape description.
That is one of my favourite things about reading The Hobbit, though, is that you don't have like reams and reams and reams of this like just florid landscape imagery.
Although it is very pretty, though, the way he describes it.
And I appreciate that we got to like see what to expect of Rivendell. And you got a picture in your book as well, so
yeah, I didn't have to worry about. I didn't need to read the words.
You could have completely glazed over.
Exactly. But yeah, like Tolkien, as always, though, is very beautiful with his words. A wide land, the color of heather and crumbling rock, with patches and slashes of grass green and moss green showing where water might be. Very like vivid detailing of their surroundings. Yeah, so this is where like I'm like, because obviously, you know, he wrote this before Lord of the Rings, but it seems the way that he's like describing like, oh yeah, the Misty Mountains and the Lonely Mountains, and we're coming out of, I think they call it like the wilds, maybe. And there's like the Wilderland and the Lonely Mountain in the east. It seems like this is very different geography from the geography of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Not that I ever understood it in Lord of the Rings, though, so.
I've been reading The Hobbit for this on Kindle as opposed to my paperback copy because that's back at my parents' place, and, you know, pandemic, I can't just go pick it up or anything.
Yeah.
There's one of the things I hate most about having to do it on Kindle is because it's just really tricky to like flick back to the map and sort of reorient yourself a little bit.
I'm trying to see if this is so cute. My copy of The Hobbit has chapter 1 of the Fellowship at the end of it for like a little
That's so nice.
sneak preview. And I just think that's really funny because it's like, I don't think anyone who has picked up The Hobbit will ever be like, let me see if I can be tempted enough to read the next part. Because like, I feel like if you're reading The Hobbit, you're probably already a fan of Lord of the Rings, or you've seen the movie at least by now, you know.
Or you're not going to be like, oh, that was a nice book. I wonder if he's done anything else.
I wonder what else he's done. Oh, look, a chapter preview. Okay, yes, there is a map. All right. Okay, the Misty Mountains. All right. I suppose this is making sense to me. Is it? What's this? Oh, don't want to spoil anything. Although I guess I know that right before my map is an illustration of Bilbo in his house, but I guess I know that, yes, he does in fact return home. So
yeah.
Otherwise,
not that Lord of the Rings spoiled anything, do they?
Anyway,
I was just listening to your second breakfast Q&A that you did before diving into The Hobbit.
Wow, look at you being like
know.
Speedy and on top of it. Listeners, that literally just came out like today. That's amazing. Wow. Anyway.
But it was just where someone had asked you, like, are you expecting anyone to die in The Hobbit? And you were like,
I hope not.
Well, no, because Bilbo comes back at least.
Yeah, like I am suspicious now. Like who's gonna die? It's like this is a trope a lot in TV shows where like they'll show a funeral that's like happening in the future, but you don't know whose funeral it is. And then when they are like flashing back to show the events leading up to it, you're just like super suspicious of like you're like, oh, well, maybe that person dies because they coughed in that scene. And then you're like, no, it was definitely her because she was drinking and she's about to get into her car and she's going to get in a car. No, it wasn't her. Okay, then who? And they do all this like fake. So now I'm just like, okay, who's going to die?
It's not like, you know, you've got Gandalf there saying if anyone ever gets back at all.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God. And then I know Balin at least lives long enough to make it to Moria. Poor Balin. Where he does die eventually.
Spoilers.
I know Gloin lives long enough. I guess I wonder if Gimli's born yet at this point.
I don't think I'm good enough on like my dwarf ages to know if he would have been.
And I also like don't. Okay, let's see.
Because like obviously Bilbo, they say in this one he's in his 50s, and you know it's his 111 teeth. Wow, that's a word I can't say. 111.
111st. That's it.
Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say. It's that birthday in Fellowship. Okay,
he was born in it says TA, so is that third age? 2879. He was, see, the problem though is that I don't know, because it says his age is 262, but I don't know if that was like at the end when he and Legolas go sneaking off into the Undying Lands. Or if that was like his age in Lord of the Rings. Let's see.
So when the Fellowship of the Ring set out from Rivendell, apparently Gimli was 139 years old. I figure by that logic he must have been at least born.
Oh wait, okay, here it says. It is stated in the Unfinished Tales that Gimli was prevented with traveling from his father on the quest of Erebor. Is that what this quest is? I don't know. Because Thorin and his company thought him too young. Though Gimli, being in his 60s, considered himself ripe for adventure and was disappointed to be left behind. Aw, Gimli. Aww. Anyway, okay, yeah, so Gimli's born at this point.
Okay, because I know that they reference Gimli in the Hobbit movie at this point, but I thought, I don't know if that's just like one of those Easter egg bits, and I read The Hobbit so long ago, and I didn't want to read on in case I accidentally spoiled anything for other episodes that. Then.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to. So Gimli
was born.
How do we even get here? People dying. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. There are the problem though is that like there's I know the names of like maybe 4 of these dwarves, and so I feel like there's a good chance that one of these dwarves that I can't even remember the name of will die because there's just too many for them to all make it to the end. I don't know. We'll have to see. Anyway. They are not in any danger right now, though, thankfully. No one's in danger of dying yet, because they make it to Rivendell. And I forgot how much I loved the book elves, because I've just been in, like, movie elf world where, like, they're all so serious and
I was going to say this
ominous.
So serious.
They're so much fun. I totally forgot about that.
It's just kind of that, like, sort of mischievous energy.
Yes,
like,
yeah.
Right from the off, they're just laughing from the trees and start singing a song and kind of taking the mickey out of them a little bit.
Yeah. And Bilbo says, "It smells like elves." What? What does that mean? What? Anyway.
Beforehand as well, it's like, do they smell bad?
Do they have a smell? Because it says, because he was talking about, let's see, because before then they were talking about, let's see, the trees changed to beech and oak, and there was a comfortable feeling in the twilight. Then it's talking about the grass and a stream.
I love that paragraph so much, though, because it's just like Bilbo starting to get comfortable again, and he just like keeps falling asleep on his pony.
Yeah, his little pony. Because they're getting, it's like warmer and they're like, out of danger and everything. Anyway, apparently the elves have a smell. And Bilbo, whatever. Anywho, and then the elves start singing, "Oh, what are you doing? And where are you going? Your ponies need shoeing, the river is flowing. Oh, tra-la-la-la-lolly, here down in the valley." That doesn't rhyme. Maybe
tra-la-la-la-lally down in the valley.
Yeah, there we go. And so they just sing this like very silly song, and they mention at one point Mr. Baggins and Balin and Dwalin. So they know the names of at least some of these people.
Yeah.
And they just sing this funny little tune, and it's just so different from how they are in the movie, and it just makes me laugh so much.
I know. Like, you try and reconcile that to just, like, the image of Elrond from the movie.
Oh my gosh.
And it's
ridiculous.
They're just, like, worlds apart.
I know, yeah. And, like, I can't imagine Orlando Bloom, Legolas, doing any of this. Because he's just
he'd just be standing off to the side, like, with one eyebrow raised, looking at everyone else, like Patrick Dempsey in Enchanted.
Yes, yeah.
What is happening right now?
He's the one, yeah, because that could work because Legolas isn't from Rivendell. So he could be like, these Rivendell elves. What's up with them? Anyway, so they enter Rivendell, and they're looking around at all of the elves who are like emerging from the woods and singing these little songs. And then it says, he loved elves, though he seldom met them, but he was a little frightened of them too. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm the same way. We're like, I both love and fear the elves a little bit.
Yeah, you'd admire them from afar, but you would not want to mess with them.
Mm-hmm. And they're all like, oh, look, it's Bilbo the Hobbit on a pony. And he's like, how do these people know about me?
Yeah.
They welcome them, and they're like, you can keep going. You can keep on your way and going towards Elrond's house. It's like at the very end of the valley, or you can stay here and have food and rest and whatever. But they're all pretty eager to get to Elrond's house, even though they all wish they could, like, Bilbo for a second is like, oh, I do kind of want to, like, stay here and hang out with them and sing songs, but at the same time...
And find out how they know me.
Yeah, like, how do they know all of this stuff about me when I've never met them in my life?
But the dwarves were all for supper.
Mm-hmm, yes, but yeah, they all wanted to go eat, and so they're like, no, we'll keep going. So they arrive at Elrond's house, and this is where, like, I once again... I'm confronted by, like, the stark difference between the Hobbit Tolkien and Lord of the Rings Tolkien.
This was a bit that got me as well.
And it just makes me laugh so much. Okay, so it says, now it is a strange thing, but things that are good to know, or, oh my God, let me start this over here. Now it is a strange thing, but things that are good to have and days that are good to spend are soon told about and not much to listen to, while things that are uncomfortable, I can't read this word, palpitating and even gruesome may make a good tale and take a deal of telling anyway. So, like, that's the first part, that it's like, that's like the exact reason why Lord of the Rings is so long. It's because it's all gruesome and terrible.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm going to describe every last detail. And then it says, they stayed long in that good house, 14 days at least, and they found it hard to leave. So in the span of one sentence, 2 weeks have passed, and we don't see any of it.
It's the end of that paragraph where it says, yet there is little to tell about their stay. And if I was good at blowing raspberries, this is the moment I would do that. But it was just like, as if there was little to tell about their stay.
I want to hear it. Are you kidding me? Yeah. I want to hear it. They spent 2 weeks with elves and Elrond, and there's dwarves.
I want the whole travel
vlog.
vlog.
Yeah, like, I want to hear about all of it. And it kind of makes me laugh too, because it seems like Tolkien decided to break this rule in Fellowship when he has those chapters with Tom Bombadil.
Yep.
Where all we're like, yeah, Tom Bombadil is kind of a weirdo, and, like, that is interesting to see, but for the most part, they're not doing anything. They're just like hanging around. Yeah, and so Tolkien decided to, like, I guess he decided to, like, indulge us in that one little bit where before he was like, no, this isn't interesting to talk about, and then he decided, you know what, maybe this one time I'll do it with this crazy fellow named Tom Bombadil.
I'm not saying that I really like character-driven moments in stories or anything, but when I slogged through Fellowship, Tom Bombadil was the chapter that I liked the most.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
Like, does it have anything to do with the plot? No.
Absolutely not. Was it fun to read? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Although I do kind of appreciate that we get told that the elves are singing all these songs all the time, and we do not have to read any of these songs.
That is, that is true. Because Tolkien easily could have just been like, you know what, I'm going to write out all of the songs that they sang.
Yeah. Unless he did, and then his editor came back like, this is a kid's book. You can't.
Yeah.
At which point you said, okay, you're getting a trilogy after this in
Yeah,
which I do all of these things.
It's going to be full of songs, yeah.
Yep.
I do, though, appreciate, however, that, like, he decides to move to keep the story moving.
Yeah.
Because now that, like, I've been on the other side of it where, like, he does go into dense detail for every moment that happens to them on their way to, like, do this thing. So, like, I do appreciate that, like, rather than having to read another chapter or two before something else starts happening or before they, like, pick up where they left off on their journey, I do appreciate that, like, he's like, nope, not much happens, so I'll just skip to when the next thing
move past it
happens. So yeah, 2 full weeks pass in the span of one sentence. And then he starts describing Elrond. He is the master of the house, and I started singing Master of the House from Les Mis.
That's exactly what just happened in my head as soon as you said those words.
Yeah, it says the master of the house was an elf friend, and as soon as I read that, I was like, master of the house, keeper of the something, I don't remember all the words. Anyway, and so he starts describing Elrond, and he was as noble and as fair in face as an elf lord, as strong as a warrior, as wise as a wizard, I never know how to pronounce this word, venerable?
Venerable?
Sure.
I don't know. It's one of those words that you read and you never have to say it out loud until you do.
Now. As venerable as a king of dwarves and as kind as summer. I love that last phrase, as kind as summer.
Yeah, literally the bit I was about to pick out was kind of summer because it's just, like, as soon as you get to Rivendell, you just get that kind of warm, cozy vibe that's like put Bilbo straight away at ease, that so much so that he's falling asleep on his pony, and then Elrond as kind as summer, and you just get those same kind of warm, cozy vibes from it.
Although I will say the summers that I experience, I'm not even in like the deep south in the US where like it gets super hot, but like my summers get extremely hot and uncomfortable and you're like, I just want to die. So like as kind as summer isn't, it's maybe for like me, I'll amend that statement to be like as kind as the thought of summer on a like dark dreary winter day. When you're like, it's 30 degrees out, my car is covered in ice, I just broke my ice scraper, and I want nothing more for it to be 90 degrees and blazing hot. And then when it is 90 degrees and blazing hot, you're like, I want nothing more for it to be 30 degrees and my car to be covered in ice.
So 30 degrees for me is like, because we use Celsius, obviously, don't we?
Right.
That is blazing hot. And I was thinking, gee, like...
I guess I mean 0
no,
degrees.
Thank you. That is not a kind summer for me.
Let's see. Okay, hang on. Celsius. I'm typing all of this with one hand. I just sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. My allergies are acting up. It's very fun. Yeah, so like 30 degrees Fahrenheit is... probably, -1 Celsius.
Yeah,
and
that
then
sounds about right.
90 degrees Fahrenheit is 32 Celsius. Yeah. So anyway.
Like that is just too hot those kind of days.
Yeah.
Those are not the kind days of summer that we're picturing.
Not the kind days of summer. Although I am dreaming of when it will be nice and warm enough so I can go and hang my hammock up by the trees in my front yard, and I can hang out, literally hang out, and read, and that'll just be nice and wonderful.
Oh man.
Again. Anyway, so yeah, Elrond is kind as summer. And it's just such a funny description to read again, since I'm like so fresh off the movies, because Hugo Weaving is like the exact... I wouldn't describe him as any of those things. Especially like the way, like not just like the way he looks, but just like the way he portrays Elrond and the way they wrote Elrond. I wouldn't describe him as any of those things. Maybe
like noble and wise. But...
yeah. And we do see him in that battle at like the beginning of the movie, so maybe he is as strong as a warrior, but like I don't think he's kind.
He doesn't strike me as like the kind of brute force strength though, so much as that kind of quiet, controlled sort of practiced strength.
Yeah.
Well, at least in the movies, you know.
But yeah, it just made, and like again with the elves, it makes me wish that like they had gotten the dynamic more correct for the movies of the elves. And especially, I talked about this a lot about how they totally like messed up the like characterization of Gimli and Legolas in the movies, where like they kind of switched them, and Legolas from the book like easily could have become the comedic relief in the movie, because dwarves are, even though like they're fun here, they're still very like
they're pretty serious.
Yeah, they totally messed that up. And I'm thinking in particular, there's one scene in the extended edition of Return of the King where they have a drinking contest, and it just didn't, I was like really uncomfortable with it, and I didn't like it. And I think it would have been way funnier if they had switched it to where like Gimli was like super serious about it, and then Legolas just like pretends he has no idea what alcohol is, and then like after he's like downed a bunch of beers, he's like, oh no, I know exactly what this is, and I just beat you. So
and I will drink you all under the table.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Yeah, so then they're in the house of Elrond, and he is like really kind to them. They are able to like be refreshed, and it says their clothes were mended, as well as their bruises, their tempers, and their hopes. And they're given more provisions that were light to carry, but strong to bring them over the mountain passes. So I'm wondering, was this lame bus bread?
That's what I thought. But that line about their clothes were mended, as well as their bruises, their tempers, and their hopes, I just love that so much. It just, I don't know what it was about that line. It just really got to me. And I thought, I want that on a tote bag. I want it like on the walls everywhere. It just feels really nice.
I think it's because like we're all in a place right now where like we're all bruised. All of our tempers are like
a little bit worse for wear.
we have like very low hopes. So I think we all right now wish that like we could be in this situation where like our bruises and our tempers and our hopes are all mended. One day, everyone, be patient. We can do it. Just stay home another couple months.
No quests to Rivendell.
Yeah, so then they like spend kind of the later part of the summer there, and then they start getting ready to leave the next morning to continue their quest. Elrond pulls out, he shows Gandalf and Thorin their swords were not troll made. They are,
very old swords of the High Elves of the West.
The like markings on it have names, and so Thorin's sword is named Orcrist.
Yeah,
cool.
That's how I read it.
Awesome. A goblin. The goblin. Oh my god. Orcrist, the goblin cleaver in the ancient tongue of Gondolin. It was a famous blade. And then Gandalf's sword is Glamdring, faux hammer that the king of Gondolin once wore. And I kind of wish, because we know from Lord of the Rings that Bilbo's sword is named Sting, and I kind of thought this was going to lead to Bilbo being like, "Oh, and what's my sword's name?" And then Elrond like wouldn't have the heart to tell him that like, oh, it doesn't have a name because this is like literally a butter knife for them. And so I thought that like he was just going to make up a name and tell Bilbo that's what his sword was named, just to like make Bilbo happy.
That would have made it so much cuter.
Yeah, right. Or I thought, I don't know, maybe we'll see like in a later chapter that Bilbo's like, well, if your sword has a name, so does mine. It's Sting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it would be really, I thought it was going to lead to that of Bilbo being like, what's my sword? And then Elrond has to just make something up because he doesn't want to hurt Bilbo's feelings.
I wasn't even aware that Bilbo was kind of there at this exact point, like for this conversation, until he pipes up a little bit later. But
yeah.
Like obviously he's there because that's how we the reader are there with Bilbo.
Oh, that is true. Yeah. That is true, because technically he wrote this book.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Elrond says that like, oh, these swords are very important. They were fought in this war between goblins and elves or dwarves. I don't remember. It was fought against goblins at some point.
That's a safe bet.
And this reminded me, isn't there like this whole beef between elves and dwarves?
Yes, there's one throwaway line when they arrive at Rivendell, where it says something like, I wrote it down, dwarves do not get on well with them being elves.
Oh, I totally missed that.
But it's like, where is it?
I believe you that it's in here. I don't think you would have made it up.
Just after the song, it's like halfway through the paragraph, Bilbo loved elves, but he was a little bit frightened of them. Dwarves don't get on well with them. Even decent enough dwarves like Thorin and his friends think them foolish, which is a very foolish thing to think, or get annoyed with them. For some elves tease them and laugh at them, and most of all at their beards.
Huh. I guess like Tolkien hadn't yet come up with this idea of like this age-long like feud between dwarves and elves, because it's way in the Lord of the Rings, it's way more than just like, oh, the elves sometimes tease the dwarves and the dwarves think that the elves are silly. It's way more than that. And I don't remember the exact history behind it, but it has something to do with like a dwarf stole back something from an elf king, but the thing that they took like had been made by dwarves, and then the elves got mad and so they killed someone, and then something along the lines of that.
Yeah, like I have a really precise knowledge of like the history of Westeros, like from the Targaryen conquest onwards, but when it comes to elves and dwarves, that's about my level of understanding of this as well.
Yeah, so I don't know, I just think it's just very interesting for me, because I always had this perspective of Tolkien as being like, he has everything mapped out to a T, and he has every little detail planned. But like when you're reading The Hobbit, which he wrote years before Lord of the Rings, and like technically Lord of the Rings was really only an afterthought when they were like, hey, you got any more stories in ya? And he's like, I'm glad you asked. And so like it's just funny to see these like discrepancies between The Hobbit, which is, you know, a children's book, so obviously he's not going to get into like, well,
like
you see
3 pages worth of
thousands of
history.
years ago, this thing happened between elves and dwarves, and so he condensed it down to, you know, elves or dwarves think elves are silly and the elves tease dwarves and
for their beards.
And their beards. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, I'll try and do some digging into that and figure out like, where did he decide to like come up with all this like drama and this feuding between the dwarves and the elves, because they seem very happy. Like the dwarves, they wouldn't have stayed for 2 weeks with Elrond, you know, if they weren't happy to be there. That
was like my main gripe about this chapter, was that I was kind of disappointed with how easily they all get along when, you know,
it's a totally different story in Lord of the Rings.
It says, well, they don't really like the elves, but...
Oh my gosh.
Bless you.
I need to start taking my allergy pills. I started freaking out the other day because I was like, oh my God, I'm sneezing. Coronavirus. And then I was like, oh no, it's because I walked outside and it's starting to get warmer here. And that means that there's pollen
allergies. And
Anywho, so Elrond starts to look at the map that they have of the mountain, and he says that, oh, there's some like moon writings in here. What's the word?
Moon letters. Yeah.
It's okay, this is something that like I can't remember if I did read. I can't remember if this actually was a detail that was in an earlier chapter or if Tolkien just threw it in now and pretended like it's always been there. So Bilbo asks, what are moon letters? And then it says, he loved maps, as I have told you before, and he also liked runes and letters and cunning handwriting, though when he wrote himself it was a bit thin and spidery. So I was like, this is the first I'm hearing that he loves maps and runes and letters and cunning handwriting.
There's like a bit in the first chapter where I think it's like Thorin gets the map out to show everyone after, you know, they've raided Bilbo's pantry. Bilbo's like, oh, a map, because there's like maps hung on all his walls and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the first we get about him liking runes and letters and cunning handwriting.
And that's definitely also like the Took in him coming out, because the first chapter especially talks all the time about like his Tookish side was winning. And so like that's definitely a Tookish trait of liking runes and letters and cunning handwriting.
Yeah. But I also think it's just really cute that, like, in this part of the scene, Bilbo doesn't say anything when they're talking about the swords, but as soon as they start talking about, like, the map and these secret letters, he's like, oh, cool. I'm like, tell me everything.
Yeah, because swords are probably totally out of his wheelhouse, you know?
Yeah.
But letters
But he just
and
has
maps.
like this nerdy moment of, oh, this is my thing. Tell me more.
Yeah. And so moon letters, when they're written, they can only be revealed at the exact like moon phase and time of year that they were originally written. And so these letters were written during a crescent moon in midsummer, which is like very convenient for our heroes here, because
Convenient
it also
is exactly the word I use.
Yeah, it has to be they are in midsummer during a crescent moon, so they are able to read what it says.
Like, it feels like that could have been a whole side quest if this was more like, you know, Lord of the Rings, where, you know, then they have to make sure they can read the the moon letters before they can continue on their quest, and that's going to detour us for like 12 chapters. But it's a kid's book, so we'll kind of give them a pass on the plot convenience of this one.
Yeah, exactly. And it says, stand by the grey stone when the thrush knocks. In the setting sun with the last light of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole. I had to read that like 3 times to be like, am I reading this correctly? Kind of makes nonsense to me. I guess we'll see more about that phrase later on, I'm assuming.
Of all the things they don't mention during their time with the elves, this one is worth mentioning.
Mm-hmm. And Thorin says that Durin was the father of the fathers of the eldest race of dwarves, the Longbeards, and my first ancestor. I am his heir. And Elrond asks what Durin's day is, and Thorin says it is the first day of the This was another thing that like I had to read 3 times to be like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It is the first day of the last moon of autumn on the threshold of winter. But I'm so confused because then he says, but this will not help us much, I fear, for it passes our skill in these days to guess when such a time will come again. And I'm like, what do you... Like, you just said that it's the last day of the first moon of autumn right before winter. Like, can you not...
Yeah. So I had to, like, reconcile this to my knowledge of the Hobbit movies to try and, like, puzzle out this sentence. And I can only assume that it was the last moon of... When the last moon of autumn and the sun are both in the sky together is Durin's day.
Oh, okay. So it's like a
like
rare
really
occurrence.
Exact moment that they're never quite sure when is this going to be.
Yes, right, because he does say, we still call it Durin's Day when the last moon of autumn and the sun are in the sky together. Okay, got it. Yeah, so they're not sure when that's going to happen, so they're just kind of like, these moon letters. I'm glad we found out that, you know, it says this, but there's nothing else we can do about it, so, oh well. Tally-ho, onward.
That remains to be seen, as Gandalf says.
And then, Gandalf asks if there's any more writing. They can't tell because, you know, they can only see what was written under, like, this certain phase of the moon. So, like, it could be that maybe later on in their journey, they discover that there's more writing. Who knows? And then the next morning... Again, beautiful description. The next morning was a midsummer's morning, as fair and fresh as could be dreamed. Blue sky and never a cloud, and the sun dancing on the water. And so with that, they go onward and leave Rivendell and go towards the Misty Mountains.
Ooh.
And it just...
Misty Mountains again.
It blows my mind that, like, I mean, granted, there was a lot that needed to happen in Rivendell for the plot in Fellowship, but like it blows my mind that like we spent a good like 60 pages in Rivendell in Fellowship of the Ring. And then here it's like 4 pages.
Yeah, and half of that is to say they arrived, they spent time there.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell you about that time.
Oh man. Yeah, so that is like the shortest chapter ever. A short rest. Beth, is there anything that we missed that you wanted to like bring up or talk about?
So there's like one moment with Thorin when they're talking about the swords where he says, I will keep this sword in honour, may it soon cleave goblins once again. And Elrond says, a wish that is likely to be granted soon enough in the mountains. But now let's talk about the map.
Totally missed that. Like, what a throwaway. Like, yeah, there's probably going to be goblins. Don't worry about it. Anyway, this map.
Yeah, not that there's like any amount of foreshadowing with like, but we'll see if anyone makes it back. Well, let's see if anyone cleaves goblins with this cool sword.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have to remember that, like, you know, this is a children's book and children aren't usually, they're not going to like pick up on subtle foreshadowing. Yeah. So I guess
like, cool.
Yeah.
That sword killed some goblins once. Let's look at the map.
Yeah. All right, cool. This is so funny because I think this episode is going to be like the shortest episode I've ever put out, which is just so funny to me because I'm coming off of the movies where I started. I had to make them, and usually my episodes are an hour long, and I had to make my movie episodes an hour and a half because it was just, and even still, that was me cutting out a bunch of stuff. So like,
it was all great content, MC.
Thank you. So like, it's just so funny to like be coming off of like the most content heavy stuff I've ever done, and then this is a chapter where like they show up to Rivendell, they stay there for 2 weeks, they read a map, they look at some swords, and then they leave.
Yep.
And that's it. But it's still very enjoyable. And it was very enjoyable to have you on, Beth. So where can people find you on the internet? And do you have anything you would like to plug?
Well, thanks for having me again. It's been a lot of fun. People can find me on Instagram at author Beth Reekles. I'm on YouTube at Beth Reekles, Twitter at Reekles. I have a book coming out this summer called The Kissing Booth 3. I don't know if anyone will have heard of that or be expecting it. But that's available for pre-order if anyone is interested in things that don't involve orcs and trolls and goblin cleaving swords. And I do movie reviews on my Instagram if anyone is really keen to know about like my thoughts on the How to Train Your Dragon soundtrack as it's been lately.
Let's see.
It's just me geeking out about stuff.
You did those like what, yesterday or day before or something, How to Train Your Dragon, and I was just like, what good movies? Those are such good movies.
I'm gonna watch the second one now after we finish this podcast.
Oh man,
I've been like looking forward to this afternoon the whole day because I thought, I get to talk to MC about The Hobbit, and then I get to watch How to Train Your Dragon 2. It's gonna be so much fun.
Sounds like a perfect day to me, honestly.
Yeah.
I remember I watched How to Train Your Dragon. I never saw any of the How to Train Your Dragon movies in theaters.
No, me either.
I think I was, because I definitely like wasn't the target demographic for those. So like I wasn't gonna go see an animated film when I was like in high school or college. Not that like you can't do that, because I did go see Incredibles 2 in the theaters when I was in college. So, you know, whatever. Anyway, and I remember watching How to Train Your Dragon 3 whenever it either like came to Netflix or Hulu or something, and I was like, oh, let me put this on, and then like it ended, and I was just sitting in my living room like sobbing heavily. Oh, good movies, good movies. That's What I'm Talking About is a proud member of WBE. You can learn more about the network by going to WBE.org, where you will find all of our shows, like one of our newest ones, Unsobered.
Hi, I'm Julia, the host of Unsobered, Badass Women of History and Literature, the podcast where I talk about the women that the history books, history classes, and the general public often overlook, or who just get a brief mention, but we never really know the whole story of their impact on the world we live in. On Unsobered, I share the stories and histories of these badass, amazing, and strong women. And while I tell you the history we don't get from traditional history classes, I get more and more drunk over the course of the episode. So join me to learn more about your favorite women, or to find a new favorite woman that you didn't even know contributed to one of your favorite things, with new episodes every other Friday.
The cover art is by Graphite, aka Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at graphite.vmb. You can get merch for That's What I'm Talking About by going to tpublic.com/user/talkingaboutpod or following the link in the episode description. I believe as you are listening, there's a sale going on, so if you're interested in getting t-shirts or stickers of some kind, go check that out. You can find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at talkingaboutpod. You can find me on Twitter at MC What's Up and Instagram at MC Turndown for what. You can support the podcast by going to patreon.com/talkingaboutpod, where you will find different tiers and perks. You can join the WB&E Discord server for $3 a month. In fact, on Discord for Talking About patrons, we will be doing a hangout of some kind this week. I don't know what we'll do during that hangout, but we're hanging out. Or you can become a sponsor of the podcast like Danny. Danny, thank you so much for all of your continued support of the podcast. I appreciate it so much. And Danny's long-term support of the podcast actually reminded me of this. If you become a patron of That's What I'm Talking About, you will get a postcard when you join, and you will also get another postcard for every 6 months that you remain a patron. And so patrons who have been supporting me for a while, you will be expecting another postcard in the mail as soon as I can remember to write them. Fingers crossed that happens soon. Anyway, and as always, if you like what you're listening to, please rate and review. Well, Beth, that will bring us to the end of the episode. Thank you again so much for coming on. Do you have any parting words for the audience?
Just one from the elves' song in this chapter. To fly would be folly.
Ooh, and that's what I'm talking about.